So this is a diamond volute. This one just happens to have a backstrap around the diamond as well, and that's what we're going to be learning today. This headstock isn't finished, but I went ahead and did the diamond volute so that we would have something to show here. As you can see, it is a multifaceted surface, so it kind of curves up here like a traditional banjo style volute, but then it has these nice sharp diagonal points that go down and make your diamond. So we're going to learn how to do this. This is the neck that I'm going to be doing the new diamond volute on. First thing we want to do is map out where our nut is going to sit. So I'm going to do a 1/4 inch nut on this neck, and therefore I'm going to find my nut line and just give me a rough idea of where that's going to sit. And I'm going to transfer that using my square around to the side of the neck and then on through to the back as well. Once you have your nut line on the back of the neck worked out, you can go about laying out your triangle. It's a little hard to explain because this is such a 3D area of the neck with the angle back. When you do the neck, you obviously don't want the triangle continuing really past the nut. You want this to kind of be where your nut is. However, because you carve the neck, you can't really figure that out right now, right here. Your triangle will actually look like it extends a decent amount past that point, but that's because you're going to carve into a little bit of that triangle. Obviously, this changes with headstock thickness, type of neck carve. A number of different factors will play into this, but it takes doing a couple to figure it out a little bit, I think. So as you can see, I've gone ahead and I have laid out the geometry of that triangle on the neck there. So I'm back. I went outside and I used my safety planer, which we've seen me use in top carving and stuff like that. And basically all I did was I kind of roughed it out to near my final thickness of the headstock, taking into account my backstrap and head plate that I'm going to be putting on later, and just kind of roughed it out near to where my diamond is going to be. I thought a little bit more about how to better explain the geometry of this diamond and how wide and long, etc. it can and should be, at least for this method, and I found a better way of explaining it. The flat part of your diamond, the flat part here that extends all the way back, the line shouldn't leave the neck any more than a 1/2 inch behind where your nut line is. So if you're roughing out like this and you're seeing that it's coming a little further back than you wanted, basically when we go into the next step, like I said, I roughed it here so you've got some playroom. When we go to the next step and we clean this up and finalize this shape, I'm going to alter the triangle shape a little bit so that it doesn't break out of the neck on the sides any more than 1/2 inch behind where my nut line is. And that's a good kind of point of reference to work from. Alright, so our next step is we're going to take a shoulder plane, and first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen this screw and I'm going to press it against a flat surface, because even though the plane blade and the plane are fairly the same width, there's always a little bit off, and you want to make sure that the part that you're holding down is a true flat so you're not gouging the back of your headstock. So just make sure to adjust your plane first, and then basically I'm going to use my thumb to kind of support it, and we're just going to start taking off small passes to start perfecting this triangle. And you can do one section to kind of adjust your angle when needed, or when you kind of find yourself parallel to your lines and you like your lines from before, you can just take full length passes and it'll slowly work itself down. Another good thing to have handy while you're doing this is, although the shoulder plane does a nice job of getting flat and cutting, it's not always perfect. So after a number of passes, this is probably a little too early for me, but you come in here and I'm getting a little bit. And you can pull up some fibers, and using the flat of the back of your headstock and the flat of your plane, basically you're just getting it back to a nice perfect corner, and just very slightly pull off those little things. The reason you want to handle that is because it'll slowly build a curve up, and then you won't be cutting flat anymore. Obviously it'll be very, very minute, but when you try and go and glue your backstrap on and all sorts of stuff like that, you will notice it. So just kind of take care of it as it comes along. So here's what you end up with at this point. Pay close attention there. You see how I didn't take it all the way up with my line, with the plane, and how it's kind of two-step there? That's fine. All I need is for the part that I'm gluing my head plate, the thickness, I need that to be flat and straight, and a little bit extra. Because remember, this is going to end up as a diamond, so it's not going to be straight up all the way for its thickness. It's going to taper down this way, and it's also going to taper on both sides. So it doesn't have to be perfect. You need your space on the very bottom of the diamond to be perfect. So if you're a little concerned about the geometry of the diamond, like we've been talking about lately, one thing you can do at this point is you can go ahead, take one of your files, and go ahead and just obviously go further than I just did, but go ahead and rough in the shape of your neck. And if you get close to the shape of your neck and you've still got the diamond's exit points way far up, you can make your diamond a little slimmer, a little more elegant. So if you're not comfortable on your first couple tries just measuring out the diamond, having done it a couple times, you can go ahead and rough carve your necks just like the first fret area, and that's going to show you if your cuts are not far enough or going too far, etc. Basically what you want is by the end of the neck carve, you want the points of this diamond here, sorry, not the point of the diamond, but the point of the side cuts to be where your nut is. So basically your hand isn't feeling weird over the diamond, because if the nut's here, there we go, now we're playing. And we're not touching this weird flat part. You want the flat part to end before your nut and before where your hand kind of actually sits. So for the sake of illustrating a point, since most of you watching this video probably will be first time diamond volute carvers, I went ahead and did the rough carve of the first fret area so I can show you what I was talking about. I left it about a 1/16 of an inch thicker than what I'll eventually have it at, and I sort of kind of roughed in the ramp up into the diamond as well. But as you can see, my diamond isn't getting into the neck carve. This flat part isn't hitting the neck carve. So what that means is that I can actually come back in here with my plane, and I can make my diamond a little sleeker, a little thinner at the bottom, and that's going to give it a nice elegant look. That's something desirable here. So I'm just taking off the back of the diamond now, because I don't want to alter the tip too much. So I'm getting pretty close to the neck carve here, so I'm going to start trying to go the whole length of this so that I don't have a angle in my diamond side that is a straight once again. And as you can see, with the little white at the end, I am hitting the tip of my diamond, so we're good. And now I'm going to go and I'm going to make the other side match that same angle. And here we have it. I finalized it. And as you can see, it's just meeting my rough carve. And that's going to be a nice, perfectly sized and shaped diamond for this neck. If you're the type of person that likes the longer or skinnier V's, maybe one that only goes to about there on either side, one that basically if you followed the cutting pattern we saw with that plane, you would end up in the neck. And you can do this another way. Instead of doing the shoulder plane along the edges, you could actually take a razor saw and mark out your triangle, saw it down to the surface or close to the surface with that razor saw, and then obviously cut it from the side to take away the pieces, and then go about finalizing that edge just with a nice sharp chisel. So that's another way of doing that if you do like the really thin diamond volutes. Obviously the safety planer and our shoulder planing and all of that has left a couple little marks, and we do need to get this back flat, so we're going to take a nice flat block. We're going to block sand. I'm going to go with 120 grit because I've got some swirls from that safety planer still here. Notice how I don't have sandpaper coming up over this edge so that I can kind of go into my V. Watch out for your tip. You want to keep that nice and perfect. Once I get happy with the stuff up here on this, I will probably switch to a larger block with a bigger piece of sandpaper to do the area here, just so I make sure everything is nice and flat. If you're not putting a back cap on, which I'm doing on this one, and we'll see that next, then obviously when you're done sanding, you can put your head plate or not put a head plate and start carving. If you are doing a back plate like me, I'll show you how to do that as well and get it nice and tight around this V. The next step is to take our head plate material, or in this case back plate material, and we need to obviously make it fit around this diamond volute here. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to measure it. So at the end of my diamond right now, I'm looking at, well, not the end of my diamond. I'm going to make a mark so I know where I'm measuring. I'm looking at 1 1/4, right above where the scarf starts. And that is 1 9/16 long. So 1 9/16 long, 1 1/4 wide. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw that triangle on here, and then I'm going to show you all how to fit that. We have the triangle drawn out onto our back of the head material. I'm going to go ahead and use my very fine jeweler saw because I want a very nice, clean, crisp line. I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. The more exacting you can get at this stage, the better off you're going to be in the long run. So take your time. The point of your triangle is an especially important part to get right because you can file these edges fairly easily with little needle files. That point's going to be a little more difficult, and since we've paid so much special attention to getting the point on our actual carve section correct, this is pretty critical here. Also, you will notice that I do have a center line drawn on this. This is a single piece of ebony, so it doesn't really matter, but if you had something book matched, your center line is going to be very important, because if your triangle doesn't fit around your diamond that easily, it could alter your center line of the book match and not make it follow the center line of your actual neck. So pay special attention. Here's what I ended up with, and as you can see, I actually have it too wide at the base and too tight at the tip, which is actually the harder one to deal with. It's a little easier to deal with tight at the base and wide at the tip, because like I said, it's hard to file and adjust that point. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to redraw the triangle out a bit. I'm going to recut the tip a little elongated. That's going to push this back and hopefully snug things up. I'm not going to touch these areas because those are the ones I want to bring in. I'm only going to touch the areas that are tight. So this file actually makes pretty good work of what we're doing here. So it's got a nice wide flat edge so I can get straight lines, but it's fairly acute at the edges, so I can actually get in there and not really hit the other side of the tip. See, it's a little more acute than my actual diamond is, so I don't have to worry about hitting this side when I'm filing this side. So here's what you're looking for. It's tight around the point, tight all the way down the sides. So basically you have flat sides of your diamond, flat side to the triangle cut into your back plate. This is ready to glue on. As with all things, when we clamp, we want to keep, number one, keep things in place, and number two, have even pressure everywhere. So we'll be using a caul. Obviously your caul has to go around the V, and you want it fairly snug so that it's getting right up onto the edges of the V. I've covered this caul with some packing tape so the glue doesn't stick it to my backstrap. I also wanted to point out, because it's so important to keep this backstrap really wedged into that V to get a nice seamless joint, I'll take extra precautions that I don't usually take when gluing up head plates and backstraps. I'll find some spots outside of my template area where I can drill some holes and kind of keep things steady with some toothpicks so nothing shifts around during glue up. Obviously I'll be using a caul on the top as well, and so when I clamp that down, I'll nip these toothpicks off so that they're only inside, and then when I grout the headstock off, they'll just go away. One thing I am going to do is I'm going to take a piece of tape and I'm going to put it over the line where the nut will sit, so that after glue up, if there's any squeeze out, I can just pull this tape up and get rid of it. Not have to deal with that later with a chisel or something. Alright, I am still, like always when I do my headstocks, I'm going to put some masking tape to hold things in place in the normal way as well. Just kind of strap everything down. So, call one, call two. Sure they don't flop around. I'll start with very light pressure calls just to make sure I have everything where I want it. Easy, easy. Notice I have them pulling, these clamp styles pull a little bit, and I've got them pulling in the direction of the V, so if it's going to pull anything, which it shouldn't, it is going to pull it tight. I'm going to give it about 3/4 tightness. I'm going to hit all the main areas, making sure I'm going over where there's full wood. I don't want to bend the cauls or anything like that. Some people talk about how it's bad to clamp, unclamp, and then reclamp, and I totally agree with that. The reason I'm not worried about it here, and the reason you should be worried, is because squeeze out, let things get loose, and then try and squeeze out again, and you don't have much glue left in there to squeeze out anymore. The reason I'm not really worried about it here is mainly because I've got so many other clamps on here that even if I take off one of those little tiny squeeze clamps at the end, these guys, it's really not releasing the pressure in that area. Alright, now that I got all the clamps on there that I'm interested in, I'm really going to tighten things up. So now everything's out of clamps, and we are ready to actually finally start carving this diamond. So one of the key tools here is a nice wide chisel. This chisel here is a 1.5 inch blade, and it's just big enough. The reason is you're going to have a lot of width to be cutting when you're actually doing these facets. So the way we're going to start is obviously fresh sharpen your chisel before this. It should be able to shave your hair. And we're going to start by taking the angle from where our little ramp up goes and down to almost hitting the back plate. Be very careful. You slip here and you put gouges into your head plate, not going to go good. So counter pressure back with your forehand, forward with your front hand. Keep everything very, very steady. I'm going to get rid of some of the glue first, just so that's not in my way. That stuff doesn't cut the same as wood does. Alright. Small bites at a time, slowly working your angle. Sometimes I'll go from a little bit of an angle so you get a nice skew cut, and if you've got a big heel on the neck, it'll also help with that aspect of things. If you've got a really long handle on your chisel, I'm almost hitting the heel. You can also so you can start the cut and then kind of do this motion to pull shavings off. So as you can see here, I don't want to push too much. I'm doing almost a cut. The reason I'm doing that is because, as I said earlier, if you slip and you smack into your back plate, well, that's it. Ebony, obviously, it's a little easier to cover up mistakes, but other ones might not be so easy. So this little slicing motion actually works pretty well. I'm going to go all the way down to the head plate, because remember, after we do this initial angle here, we're going to have to do the facets, and we want to leave ourselves a little final cleanup space to be safe. Alright, once you've gone and approximated the taper downwards, we want to get in there and make sure that we're actually a flat taper from where your ramp up ends to the actual tip. So I'm just going to make sure I'm going across a little bit. I'm picking up shavings all along this, and it appears I'm doing pretty good. So I'm fairly flat. Alright, for those of you that don't have a natural center line built in due to the woods in the neck, now would be a good time to go about making a center line. For the sake of this, I'm going to go ahead and make one on my own. But since I've got this one in the center, I can pretty quickly and easily approximate it. Alright, so this is where it starts to get really fun, because you have a pretty wide area that you're carving these facets into, and not a lot to work with. Blade width wise, I mean, even if there's 1.5 inch width, it can get pretty hairy. But let's go ahead and start. So I'm going to start by taking off the edges here. Once again, careful. And you'll see that you'll start to see where the run out directions are and where it's chipping instead of slicing. And so you may have to change your blade angle and actually kind of shave backwards instead of forwards, and depending on how your neck was cut, etc., that's all going to factor in here. So you really got to play it by ear and figure out what direction of cut it's going to like. So this one seems to be doing best when I come in almost 45 degrees to the grain and kind of shave off like this. All I'm trying to do is get the facet to go along this straight line on my center and finish up flush with the back plate here. I'm just going to slowly work it to that goal. Once again, just like we did with our initial carving cuts, I'm trying to keep everything as flat as possible. And that's why a big chisel here really helps out, because it helps you keep things flat. When I get really close to being done with one side, so almost down, almost to my center line, I'll go ahead and do the other side. That way, when I do the final carve, everything's kind of ready and I can do a little give or take along the center line, etc., to make things perfect. Here's another great technique that seems to be working well for me only on this side. What you would initially expect you'd want to do in a diamond carve if the grain just wasn't an issue is just work your way down the length of it. And it seems to be going well on this side. So what I'm doing is I'm digging in here a little bit where I know I'm quite high up on that edge, and I'll change my angle out here on this edge to work myself in and down, and that's going to create a hump halfway up the facet of this side of the diamond, and I can come off and just kind of shave that hump back again and flatten and work it like that. Okay, so I've done both sides of this, and I've gone down all the way to the back strap, and I've made sure that my two facets meet along the center line and hit there. And as the final steps, I am going to go ahead and take sandpaper when sanding these. Try and keep this side, and your back strap considered a distinct surface, and don't kind of cross over into them. So when you're doing the back strap, you got to sand that a little bit. Don't hit the diamond. You don't want to round anything. What makes this such an elegant look is that everything is so angular and so tight and so crisp. You don't want to ruin that by rounding like over your tip here. So treat them all as separate, distinct surfaces, and only sand one at a time. So I have a little more sanding left to do, but this is what we're looking at. And that's actually sort of where I'm going to leave off the actual carving video. I'm not going to do the rest of my sanding right now, simply because I want to get the rest of this neck carved. I want to get this headstock shape cut out before I do my final sanding on this. But basically what's going to happen is your side sections along this headstock they're going to work just like any other headstock you've probably done. Basically, once you have this shape cut out for your headstock, you're just going to taper the sides of this headstock in so that they meet at the point of the triangle, and you're also going to just round these over. I'd take a look at what final V's look like so that you can get an idea better of what this transition between neck, flat, and diamond looks like. But that's the gist of it, basically.